Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for MAPS Legal's Journey to the Bench, featuring several trade-basing public servants that represent our community within the top of the legal public service profession, including the Honorable Asim Rehman, Chief Administrative Law Judge, New York City, and MAPS National Advisory Council member, and Samia Naseem, Federal Immigration Judge for the Chicago Immigration Court. Moderated by MAPS Deputy Professional Development Director, Madiha Zuberi. MAPS Legal is a community of practice for Muslim American legal professionals in government and public service fields. My name is Ahmed Mati, Board Chair of Muslim Americans in Public Service, a national nonprofit member organization that aims to build and formalize community, promote institutional representation, and facilitate the professional development of Muslim American public servants. If you're not already a member, I urge you to join today for free at mapsnational.org to do your part, to share your talents, and learn from others in our amazing growing national community. Our event host and moderator, Madiha Zuberi, is a senior counsel at the SEC's Division of Enforcement, Crypto Asset, and Cybersecurity Unit in the Los Angeles Regional Office. As an enforcement attorney, Madiha conducts investigations for possible violations of federal securities laws related to crypto markets and disclosures and controls issues with respect to cybersecurity, including FTX and Silicon Valley Bank recently. Prior to joining the SEC, Madiha was an attorney at Baker Haast Tetler, I always get that one wrong, in New York and Los Angeles offices, where she served as counsel to the trustee liquidating the Bernie Madoff estate. Alongside her career, Madiha has devoted much of her time to increasing diversity within the legal community. And she's the co-founder of the Muslim Bar Association of New York, Mubani, and the Muslim Bar Association of Southern California, Mubasik. Not as rolled off your tongue like Mubani. For both of which she served in leadership for many years. Madiha received her JD from New York Law School. Take it away, Madiha.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for that, Ahmed. First, I think I'd like to say that, each of us is speaking in our own capacity and not on behalf of our employers. And so with that, quickly, I'd like to introduce our really great speakers who I've known personally, so I'm lucky to have them in my roster of mentors. First, I'll start with Asim Rehman. Sorry, my kid's in the back. So Asim, has had an amazing career. He started his legal career clerking for the Southern District of New York and then worked in private practice at law firms handling complex litigation and white collar matters. He later went in-house to MetLife in New York. In 2014, he joined the New York City government as general counsel for the Office of the Inspector General for the NYPD and the Department of Investigations. And in 2020, he joined the New York City Law Department as chief of staff. And in 2022, Asim was named commissioner and chief administrative law judge for the City of New York's Oath Office, which stands for the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings. And that's a mayor appointed position. And in 2006, Asim and a group of lawyers, including myself, co-founded the Muslim Bar Association of New York. And at that time, Asim served as a president of Mubani, where he helped build Mubani into one of the country's largest and most active regional bar associations for Muslim lawyers and law students. And while with Mubani, Asim spoke on issues concerning civil liberties and the Muslim American community. He's consulted with the New York community organizations and the mayor's office and with law enforcement. And with all that amazing career, Asim takes time to be an amazing father to a tween daughter. And I'm sure everyone's really excited to hear more about your career, Asim, or I should say Judge Rehman, but I don't know, I can't say that. Not used to it. Turning to Samia, Judge Naseem has had also an illustrious career in public service. From 2010 to 2019, Judge Naseem served as Assistant Chief Counsel for the Office of the Chief Counsel for ICE, or Immigration and Customs Enforcement, in New York and in Chicago. And prior to that, for about 3 years, she was a trial attorney at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. I'm sorry, somebody mute themselves. I think they're not on mute. Thank you. In 2019, Judge Naseem was appointed judge of the Chicago Immigration Court by Attorney General William Barr, making her one of the first Muslim women to serve in this role. And with that impressive background, Judge Naseem is also a mother of 4 boys, including a toddler. And I know she takes time to make some really amazing dessert creations, which I've seen. So thank you so much, both of you, for your time. And we really hope to learn from your experiences and sort of, get to know how, you've come to your positions, and some of us who might be considering a career in either public service, it might not be in public service, or, a judicial career. We'd love to hear from you. So I think I'll turn first to, Judge Rahman. Asim, as Commissioner and Chief Administrative Law Judge for Oath, what type of cases do you hear at Oath, and can you tell us a little bit about your role?
Sure. Thanks, Madiha and Ahmed and MAPS for hosting this event. I'm really happy to be doing it alongside Judge Naseem, and to share whatever I can with our group today. So New York City is a big city, as you all know, and as part of our city government, we have an agency called Oath, which is the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings, and I run that agency. And as Madiha noted, I'm speaking here today in my personal capacity, but I'm really happy to talk about the exciting work of our agency. So at all levels of government, at federal, at state, at municipal, you have administrative courts. And most of you, I think, probably have now learned through your law school professional career the difference between the administrative tribunals, and then the state courts, and then the federal courts. And so we're here today to tell you about what it means to be an administrative judge. And in New York City, we are unique, and there's not a lot of cities in the country that do this, where the majority, not all, but the majority of our administrative trial work and tribunals work is done in a singular agency that sits outside of the enforcement agencies. So at a lot of cities, if a public servant is going to get fired and they want to have a hearing pursuant to their union rights, that hearing happens within the agency. In New York City, it happens at Oath. In a lot of cities, if someone gets a ticket, a civil summons, not criminal, from the sanitation department or from their Department of Buildings, they have to go fight that ticket. They have to go to the agency. But in New York City, it's not at the agency, it's at Oath. So we're this, even though we're part of the administration, we are this independent agency, the Central Independent Administrative Law Court. From a volume standpoint, I very much believe that we are the busiest court in the country. Each year, we receive and process more than 500,000 civil summonses. And about half of those, about 250,000 of those, go to a hearing. And we conduct those hearings each year. And then there are an additional several thousand trials that we have administrative law judges hearing that have to do with civil servant rights. And so it's just this week alone, we probably did, last week alone, we probably did more than 1,000 appearances. So we are an exceedingly high volume court in a very busy city, and we turn around our decisions very quick. It's really exciting because we touch on so many areas of New York City law. And in my role as the commissioner and chief administrative law judge, I'm responsible for running this agency. So while I do have the judicial title, and while I do have a robe in my office, and while I do conduct some hearings, the majority of my day is actually non-judicial. The majority of my day is running the agency day to day. So it is dealing with our, strategic planning. It's liaising with other parts of city government. It is dealing with budget and management, and having conversations with oversight, and a whole host of things that just come from running a place. So that's a lot of what I do in my day to day.
And just to give us an idea, what's the size of the Oath staff that you manage?
Sure. We have about 400 full-time staff. And in addition to that, we have several hundred per session hearing officers. And what that means is, if you are an attorney in New York City and you are a solo practitioner and you are curious of what it is like to be a judge, but you don't want to give up your solo practice, but you want to spend one day a week hearing cases, well, you can become a hearing officer at Oath. And we have several hundred of these hearing officers who are not full.
We lost your audio, Asim. And we can come back if you want to give. Yes, you're back.
Okay. So, we have individuals who are retired, or who are new parents, or who have solo practices, and they spend a couple of days a week hearing cases while they do the other things with the rest of their time. So they are part of the Oath community as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Asim. I think we've turned to Samia. So Samia, as a federal immigration judge for the immigration court, what kinds of cases do you hear, and can you give us a sense of your docket?
Yeah, so I hear as a sitting judge in Chicago all of the cases that come through the Seventh Circuit. So we have people from Illinois, Wisconsin, and Indiana, anything that would fall under the purview of the Seventh Circuit, because when they get appealed from us, they will ultimately end up at the Seventh Circuit. So in terms of what types of cases I'm hearing, it's all immigration. So anything relating to, removability, and people seeking relief to stay in the United States when they are not in status. And obviously, USCIS is an agency that also handles these types of things. But at this point, it's when it's reached litigation and it wasn't initially in their jurisdiction or it couldn't be handled by them. And so in terms of the types of cases that even more than that, I think it's we have some elements of the criminal docket. We do have a separate detained facility that deals with immigrants that are in criminal proceedings. So they've actually gone from regular jail detention to ICE detention, and they're actually facing removal based on some criminal activity here. But there are times where they get bonded out of that, and so while some of my cases don't have any kind of criminal history, I do have cases where criminal issues come up as well. So it's definitely a wide variety, and it's very interesting. It can be anything from asylum to adjustment of status for all kinds of different reasons, and or waivers based on people who even had green cards and then committed a crime that was so severe that it took them out of status. And now, in order to stay, they need to establish something, and there's a waiver they have to be able to be granted in order to stay. So those are the types of cases that I'm working with. And there are people from all over the world. So in any given day, I could have, someone who speaks True San Sebastian at first thing in the morning, and I could have someone speaking, Telugu, and then I could have someone speaking, English. To be honest, we get cases where people have been here so long that they're fluent in English. So we also have interpreters that are on staff or also called in, because majority of our cases are non-English speakers. So we have a number of people that are in the courtroom at any given time, including the attorneys, witnesses, interpreters, and courtroom clerks. So that's what we do.
Well, that's really helpful, and I think it's a good sort of segue to a question I had for either of you, really. So, how has your identity as a person of color, whether religion or background, how has that been received by the court or impacted your career as a judge? I mean, Asim, you're dealing with a community that's largely immigrant as well in New York, the greater New York community, and as you said, Samia, you're dealing with people in your court from all over the world. How would you say that that's made an impact on how you do your job as a judge?
I can start. I think that in terms of the immigrants, I get a sense of maybe relief or a little bit of comfort when they end up in my courtroom, because for whatever reason, I think they feel a little more understood. And that's without me even saying anything. It's just the fact that it's a person of color on the bench. And, I think that it eases things up a little bit. I will say that I don't think it hasn't always been the most positive experience for me. One, being a woman, two, being a woman of color, three, being, add Muslim to that. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. I know that I went to training, for example, and I've never told anyone this, but my parents would probably kill me, but here it goes. I went to the training court. We had a 2-week training court in Denver, and it was me and 2 or 3 other judges that started at the same time, and they had put our names on our chamber doors, and they had put my name down as Hassan Naseem, and it was completely incorrect, and there was no place where they would have gotten that name from, but it's not my name. And so I took the sign down, and I told someone, I'm sorry, excuse me, this is not correct. It never got fixed. They never put up a new sign, and nobody else had a problem with their names, even though there were 2 people named Phil. Both Phils were correctly labeled with their last names. So I remember just feeling a little bit slighted, I think, and my parents were not happy to hear that, and they're like, don't tell anyone this, and I didn't. But I don't think it's anything on me. I think it's just unfortunate that people don't pay closer attention in these situations or rectify when things like this go wrong. And another thing I'll mention is in court, I had I had to stand up a little bit for myself at the beginning as a new judge, getting the respect from the private bar coming in. I'm young-ish. Maybe I look younger than I am as well. And I think that can cause people to feel that they can, behave a certain way. And so I started receiving documents from one particular attorney, and the name on the documents was completely incorrect. It was a Muslim name, just not mine. And the documents would come to me. And then I started to get frustrated. I was initially accepting them, but I started to get frustrated because I would correct them, or I would send out something crossing off my name and correcting. And so there was a case with this attorney before me, and I just rejected the submissions. And I told my clerk, let the attorney know the submissions have been rejected because there's no judge here by that name. And so the attorney resubmitted the documents with my name correct. So when the trial happened, I marked all of the evidence. And at the end of marking evidence, I always ask, is there anything else that was submitted to the court that I didn't mark into evidence? And the attorney said, yes, there's another document. And I said, this is all I have. And she said, well, I submitted it, on such and such date. And I said, is it one of the documents you submitted under a different name? Because we had an issue here where you were submitting documents. And she said, you should have known it was for you. And I said, how should I know that was for me? It's not my name. And to me, that's kind of insulting because I'm the only Muslim Indian person or Desi person on the court. I should assume that anything coming to a person with a Muslim's name would be mine. And I told her that I'm not going to assume something with someone else's name is for me. And it was rejected. And if you didn't resubmit it, it's not before the court. And she said, are you telling me you're not going to accept that document because it doesn't have your name on it? I said, that's exactly what I'm telling you. And it's been 3 years and she's never submitted anything with the wrong name again. So I fixed that situation, but it was unfortunate that it had to get to that. And I think that's one, it's not just the fact that I'm Muslim or have a Desi name, but also being a woman. I don't know, maybe a man in my position, wouldn't have the audacity to speak to you that way, right? So I come across as kind, and I think that sometimes can be mistaken for a weakness, but it's not, so.
It's definitely challenging being in a position of power as a woman, a woman of color. Asim, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't. So much of what Samia said was so on point, and there are little nuggets in there that I'd reinforce as well. But I should leave it there because how she put it was just so perfect and eloquent, and really, I think, went to the heart of what you were asking.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I guess turning a little bit to the topic. Well, actually, let's talk a little bit about your how you ended up in a career of public service. I know, Samia, you've had a long career in public service with the DOJ and the Department of Homeland Security. And so just wondering, what inspires you to remain in public service, and what did inspire you? And I'll ask the same question to you, Asim, afterwards.
Yeah, so I had started out my career as a law clerk, and then after my clerkship, I was working. Actually, I decided not to pursue family law, which is what I had initially thought I wanted to do, and I just found it to be a little too. It was too emotional for me, and I found it to be just not pleasant. And so I told my father, who is an immigration attorney, that maybe I would work with him and learn about immigration. And he said, come on board. And so I worked with my father for a year. And after a year, he said, I love you and I love having you work for me, but I can't be your only boss. You got to have somebody else out there because, when your dad's recommending you, of course, your dad is going to recommend you later in life. So he said, I'm going to encourage you to go and do something else. And I found this opening at the Department of Justice, and it was a supervisory position. And at that point, I was like 25 years old. Yeah, 26. And I said, Dad, first of all, it's Department of Justice. Okay. Secondly, it's a supervisory position. I mean, you got to go in there at entry level. You're not going to go in there and be somebody's boss. And he just looked at me and said, what are you talking about? You can't win if you don't play. You got to try. And I okay. And so there was this really complicated immigration. They're called KSAs, or knowledge and skills assessments you have to fill out in order to even apply for these things. I'm honest to God, didn't even understand half the questions. And he sat next to me and said, oh, okay, here, this is what you should write. This is what you should. So, we filled it out. And of course, a couple months go by and they send me an email sorry to let you know or inform you, we're looking for someone more qualified. I'm like, see, Dad, I told you, like, I told you this wasn't going to happen. And he said, okay, all right, but at least you know, and you tried. And then another few months went by and I get a call, and it was somebody at the Department of Justice. And they said, well, we were looking at your application and we couldn't take you as a supervisor, but we would love it if you would apply to be a trial attorney here. And I said, okay, done and done. And so that's how I entered as a trial attorney at the Department of Justice. And I have to give credit to my dad, because I never, ever would have tried that. I never would have applied for that. I just would have believed I wasn't good enough. And so that's how I ended up as a trial attorney. It was an amazing experience, because and it's funny, my career's a little, I don't want to say backwards, but the normal trajectory would have been for me to do the DHS part where I'm doing this trial level work, and then to do the Department of Justice level work where you're doing the federal appellate litigation. But it just so happened that I ended up in federal appellate litigation first, and it was highly complex, and it was very stressful to jump into very complicated subject matter. And not only, it's not that you're researching and writing this stuff, at this point you're defending somebody's decision at a lower court. And so I had to learn, and it was an uphill battle, and it was a really great experience. Traveling on behalf of the United States government, arguing in the federal circuit courts. I argued Second Circuit and Sixth Circuit and Ninth Circuit. And it was really amazing experience going before these circuit court judges. And yeah, I really loved it. I did that for 3 years, and I ended up having to move to New York. And so that's why I ended up going to ICE, because the move from New York, the move from Washington, D.C., I couldn't leave DOJ at that point. I wish there was remote work back then, but unfortunately, we didn't have that option. So I applied for a position with ICE as a trial attorney, so I could continue along the immigration path, and also with trial work. And so at the Department of Homeland Security, I spent the next 9 years doing the trials that I should have done. Basically the kind of work I was working on the appeals for, I was doing that trial work at that point. So, and what keeps me in public service, I think, really, and obviously from there I ended up becoming a judge, but what keeps me in public service is just that there's a huge reward in being able to make a difference in people's lives. By the way, there's an echo. I don't know if you hear it, but I hear it. Hopefully we can fix that. But I think that in my current position, right, if someone gets a grant of relief, and it's a grant, though, for example, asylum, it's not just that person that's getting asylum. It's that person, their spouse, their children that are riders on that application. They're ultimately going to get a green card and become citizens, and then bring their parents. And then next thing you know, you've got generations of change, and people who were living hand to mouth or starving or being persecuted or pursued are now getting an education. It's changing the entire trajectory of generations just by that one case. To me, that is such a rewarding feeling, knowing that I can make a difference like that in someone's life. And the number of times people are crying when there's a decision, and I'm trying not to cry in that moment, too, because I'm supposed to be this composed person. But in those moments, it's so hard not to feel that, because you know what it's worth. And so it's huge for me to be able to do that kind of life-changing work. And even as a trial attorney, I had that experience because I had the choice. In some cases, I had the choice to say, I'm not going to prosecute this case. I'm going to exercise discretion and not prosecute. And that person is just sort of free to go, and whenever I could do that, it was a good feeling knowing that, or I could tell the judge, I'm not appealing this case. Go ahead and grant it. And so there were times where maybe it wasn't, the strongest case at that point, but I felt that, the person was in a position where it would be terrible for them to go back. And I would just say, we're waiving appeal. And so it is a great, it is a reason to stay in public service. There is help for people, and we do need compassionate people, and it makes a difference if somebody is. And there are times when I can't grant a case, right? But to have someone with compassion tell you that is a lot different than to have somebody who's stern and cold and just like to the point. I think it makes a difference. So
yeah, that's always rewarding to have that kind of outcome on someone's life. So it's amazing. And Asim, can you talk a little bit about, you went from the traditional private practice route and then you went into public service. So you talk a little bit about what inspired you, especially in New York City during, the the 9/11 times and how that impacted you.
Sure. Let me first say that, like, everything Samia said was awesome, but one of the things that really struck me the most was that she has a lawyer as a parent. I think there are so many people in our Muslim legal community who can't say that. Like, Muslim professionals in America to say that, like, oh, my dad's an engineer, or oh, my mom's a doctor, like this or that, like, or in finance, or an entrepreneur. People have that, but not many people have parents who are lawyers. So I think that's particularly special. So thanks for sharing that. So um, my road to public service was long, but it was also kind of obvious. And I think the key word in there is service. I think that many of us belong to a tradition, most of us belong to a faith tradition where this notion of service is really instilled and ingrained in our religious practice. This notion of, taking care of your fellow human, of not taking for granted what you've been given and trying to share that out and just, make the world a better place, tikkun olam, as our Jewish colleagues say. And so, the idea of service for me has always been there. So even though I started out in the private sector, I clerked, I went to a large firm, I was in the law firm world for about 9 years before going in-house at a major financial institution. While I was doing that private sector work for our private clients and working with some of the finest lawyers I've ever worked with on really interesting matters, I still had this yearning for service. I was able to, nourish that yearning in part through, pro bono work, but a big part of it was also through Mubani. Was as Madiha was saying, like, we started Mubani in 2006, and one of the reasons we started it is because we felt like not only do we need a place where Muslim lawyers and law students can go to collect, but we also need a channel through which they can serve. Because being in New York in the years after 9/11, we were part of a community that was in particular need of support. And I clerked just down the road from the World Trade Center. The towers were hit. It was like my third week of work. And my personal and professional life was very much defined by what happened that day. And now I'm back. I work just half a block from the Trade Center site. But so we had much to do, and my now wife called Mubani, said that was your first wife because of the amount of time that I put into that organization with Madiha and others. And one of the things that became really important to me was police overreach in New York City and police accountability. And many of you may know of the kind of stories that emerged of the NYPD and surveillance of communities of faith post 9/11, kind of under the guise of intelligence and security. And so I began engaging with the police, engaging with community leaders, advancing civil liberties issues on a variety of fronts, working with coalitions of Muslim and non-Muslim organizations. And this was something I just had devoted so much of my time and life to. Then in 2013, the city of New York decided that more oversight was needed for our police department. So they created an office of the Inspector General for the police department. It would sit outside of the police department. It was something a lot of advocates had pushed for. And I had worked with those advocates on advancing this idea. And so victory, the office was created, but then they appointed someone and he started traveling around the city, meeting everyone from, the commissioner of the police to the head to Al Sharpton and everyone in between, saying, I'm here, here's who I am, I need a staff, send me good people. So folks from the civil rights community approached me and said, hey, Asim, you've been doing so much of this work by night, why not just go and make it your job? You're already doing this service, now, you can just do it full time. And I thought, that's really interesting. Maybe I should. And I went to my Desi immigrant parents and I said, listen, I'm thinking about pursuing this opportunity. And I fully expected them to say, hey, listen, you've been doing so much of this already with so much of your time, but you have a good job. You're doing really well at this company. You're rising up the ranks. Why don't you just continue to keep this as a side gig? But no, the first thing that came out of my mom's mouth was, you have to do this. You have to serve your city. And this is a really important issue for your community. And that was a big push that I needed And just to have the support of so many people saying, listen, we need good people. This is an important issue. It's the issue of our time. And I got to work on it in city government. I got to help build an office from scratch, which you don't get to do very often in city government. So, and as soon as I got there, something felt right. Like all of this service work that I had been doing before felt right. But now I was able to marry kind of different parts of me together in the same place. I would be doing less community engagement work because now I was in government, but I was able to kind of satisfy and nourish that need for service. And it's paid off. I've now had almost 10 years in the city government and been able to do some really interesting things, work on some incredible issues, and have the honor of being appointed by the mayor to run our administrative law court. So that's my story of how I got here and why I'm doing it.
Thank you. And I think I was saying earlier that all three of us, Asim, Sami, and I, we are all connected through Mubani.
That's right. I guess I'm not sure, Asim, but I recall meeting you on several occasions. I was a member of Mubani, and it was an excellent organization. It was a really great place to go, and some great events, and always beautiful locations for the events. But yeah,
it still is a good organization.
Still going to good organization.
I'm just not there.
I know.
Well, and we were in private practice. We had access to all these cool offices.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Asim. And I mean, it's super inspirational to see that you both of you sort of jumped on your passions and made that your career. And it's important to see that you're fulfilled by your careers. And so I think that sort of segues to our next topic and sort of the topic of the day, journey to the bench and sort of tips. So I can open it up to either one of you. It's sort of the same question. Someone is interested in becoming a judge or sort of like the pseudo judge role, Asim, you were saying that you're in, what tips would you give them? And if you know anything else beyond what you've sort of done in your careers, but know generally, what are ways you can create inroads to a judgeship from what you've learned in your trajectory? Please, share that with us and take notes, folks.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One is I'll just kind of give the high level, a couple of high level points. And the reason I make them high level is because the good news is there are a lot of more detailed kind of pathways to the bench panels out there. And you will find almost every major minority bar association is going to have this type of event. And whether you're a member of that organization or not, go learn, listen to those judges, and hear what they have to say, because there are pathways, and you should get into the weeds on what those are. But let me offer a few high level points. One is there's no substitution for having strong litigation experience or experience in that kind of area that you're working in. If you want to be a family court judge, there's no substitution for being an expert in litigating family law cases, and ideally in that particular venue. So, know the law and have a good resume, a good litigation resume, and be conscious of that, because if you are right now a junior associate at a big law firm, you need to understand that you're only going to get so many opportunities to litigate a case. And so maybe you want to build up something with more pro bono work. Maybe you want to leave and go work for the city law office or the district attorney's office. And so think about that. The second thing I'll say is, so there's the basic litigation experience. The second thing I'll say is, I can't stress enough how important it is to have a strong network. And by being at events like this, you're already doing that. And even if you're not kind of a social person, you have to kind of be out there, go to bar association events, go to events hosted by the court that you're interested in working in, cold call people and say, I'm interested in learning more about this. Could I take you out for coffee? Lawyers love talking about themselves. And just start being present. And I have spoken to many judges who had perfect credentials and then didn't get called But then when they really started making the rounds and getting more involved or being politically engaged, like maybe they sat on their community board and really kind of building a reputation for themselves, then it made a difference. And then people think about you. I threw my hat in the ring for another judicial pursuit, which didn't pan out, but I was so happy to see how many people came out in my corner, people who were involved with the process, who I happened to work with in a prior life, people who knew about it and can introduce me to other judges. I ended up having a random call with a judge in Florida just because someone said, hey, talk to this judge. And he gave me 10 minutes of his time and we had a good conversation and I learned about the process he went through. So your network will help you. You can't be afraid to use it and you can't be afraid to go out there. You can't just kind of rely on your good legal work product alone. You have to kind of be known to people. I got this appointment and there are other positions that are straight up judgeships as opposed to mine, which is both judicial and kind of management, that are appointed. And I believe that I got appointed because of my reputation, but also because when I put my name in the hat for the mayor's appointment committee, there were people on that committee who I had crossed paths with or who knew people I'd crossed paths with. And there were folks who were vouching for me like, hey, Asim's a good guy. We should put him on our short list. So the relationship aspect of it is really, really important. Let me pause there. I'll see if anything else comes back, but those two kind of main things of kind of really know your subject area well and have that litigation experience, and two, your network. And then three, let me just say the applications for a lot of these judicial positions, they go really deep and they will look at, they will ask you to tell us about everything you've ever written, tell us about every speech you've ever given. And so you ought to keep a dossier of things. If you get a letter published to the editor of some newspaper, keep a copy of that. Start building that dossier now. You should live the life you want to live and say the things you want to say, but be mindful that those things could also have an impact later. Here's the other thing I'll say. One of the things that was really encouraging, and I hope this pushes more people to the bench, is for many years, the path to the bench, in particular the federal bench, followed a certain trend. You want to be a federal judge? It was really important that you probably work at the U.S. Attorney's Office or maybe at the federal defenders. And other judgeships, like here, if you want to be a state court criminal court judge in New York City, there's certain things you need to have on your resume. But before President Biden was sworn in, when he was president-elect, he sent a letter out to all the senators. And it's an inspiring letter to read. And he said, we have to fill our federal bench with a more diverse range of candidates who have more diverse professions. And he was basically saying, I don't want you to just nominate big law firm partners and former federal prosecutors. Like, I want you to start nominating people with careers that follow a different path, with the civil rights litigators, with the nonprofit lawyers. And we are seeing that he is now appointing people who have those backgrounds to the bench. And so that is an opportunity. So if there's anyone here in attendance who's thinking, I'd love to be a judge, I'm already midway through into what I'm doing, and I don't think I just have that pedigree, or I don't have that profession, I'm not on that professional path, don't stop. If you have a non-traditional path, you can still get there.
Thank you, Asim, for the practical tips and just the guidance that that you were given yourself. So thank you for that. And Samia, would you agree with Asim, like his experience and sort of what would you say is your tips?
Yeah, I think that those are some excellent pieces of advice that Asim gave. I think I probably have three things to say myself. The first thing I would say is that you really, and this isn't related to your litigation experience, it's really believing in yourself. If you don't believe that you're qualified and capable, nobody else is going to believe you. So you really have to first believe that you're capable and you're, I can do this. I can be this person. That's the first thing. And I think that's part of the reason I am where I am, is because my dad said, yeah, you can do this. And I'm like, well, you're my dad. And he said, no, I'm telling you, you're good and you can do this. And then not just your dad. But it did take something, to actually believe, for a minute. Secondly, I think that if you don't, as my dad said, if you don't play, you can't win. So yeah, you might not get it. You might not get the position 2, 3, 4 times. You might not get it, but that doesn't mean you should stop trying. If you try and it doesn't work, take a look at yourself. Take a look. Think about the interview you did. Think about the documents that submitted. Where might you have been lacking? As Asim said, if you have a network, maybe you can run things by them and say, what do you see here that I could have done better or done more of or submitted more of, or that sort of thing. So I do think that it's important to try and try again, because you won't get it on your first try all the time. I think you should be prepared, to explain why you want to do what you're doing. I'll tell you a silly story, and that is that I wanted to be a judge, and I was in New York, and there was a position open in the housing court, and I'm like, why not? Put together a huge application. I mean, the thing was thick. I don't know why they do want everything you ever written. And so I went out there with this document, and I have submitted it, and they called me for an interview. And I didn't know anything about housing law. So I bought these books, and then I was studying, and I had flashcards, and and as Asim said, there's no substitute for that litigation and that type of law. And so when I went in for the interview, there were 3 people sitting there, and a couple of questions in, they just said, what are you doing here? You should be an immigration judge, not a housing court judge. And I said, what are you going to say? We all live in apartments in New York. So, I feel like I should be able to handle this. But really, I understood the question. And I think it's a good thing to advise people is, stay in your lane a little bit. If you've been practicing a certain type of law and it, narrow in on that and try to learn as much as you can and build yourself up, in all the ways possible so that you're the best candidate. I think knowing a little bit about everything might not be helpful. Knowing a lot about something is probably helpful if you're trying to get to the bench in that subject. I think you need to take a look at applications for the positions that you are vying for, and not for right now, for later, because then once you know what they're looking for, you can start to check off those boxes, right? Okay, they need somebody who's got something published. I better start figuring out how to publish something. They need somebody who's got, a position as a professor somewhere or whatever, a teaching position. Okay, not necessarily need something, but if they're asking about those things in the application, it might be helpful to have those things. And as Asim said, if you've given speeches or if you've given, if you've published things or whatever it is, you want to keep record of that. And sometimes it's because they want to look at that and make sure you haven't said anything outrageous. So as he said, you want to make sure that what you're saying is okay to be published and scrutinized. And I think those are my main pieces of advice. You really just have to plan and then you will be able to get everything. And if you feel like there's something that they're looking for that you don't have, it doesn't mean you can't do it. Give it a try. They might overlook that and still give you a chance if they're looking for something different. So I think those are my main pieces of advice.
And that's great advice. Even the advice where you went a little outside your lane, but you learned something.
Right.
We have about 10 minutes, a little bit over 10 minutes left. I wanted to see if anyone in the audience had a question. I have some more, so I'd like to give the audience a chance. Feel free to unmute yourself. Okay, I can ask a question. Sidra, my co-deputy of professional development on MAPS had asked a question that gets to what you've already said, but I was wondering, both of you talked about having a network or people that believe in you. 2 sort of questions, and you can answer how you want. 1, did you have mentors, right? Just outside of just a network, did you have specific people? And if people don't have a network and they're thinking about, creating that network, how can someone go about creating the right network for themselves to reach their goals? And maybe part of it's working backwards from an application, but what else can they do and how can they do that?
I think, one option would be talking to the people that that are in your field. So the field that you intend to pursue in terms of, if you're going to the bench. and asking who they know and asking if they'd be willing to sit down and have a coffee with, with the three of you, or connect you with people that they know who might be willing to give you, as Asim said, 10 minutes of their time and a really good piece of advice. Or sometimes you can, if they're near enough to you, you could meet up every once and again and see if they'd be willing to mentor you and assist you. Definitely reaching out to people to see who they know is an option. Another option is just starting to attend, as he said, a lot of the bar associations, becoming a member, and then interacting with other members and trying to sort of socialize and become friends with people that way. And I think eventually being able to expand your network that way is a really good idea, especially if you're joining a bar association that has people that sort of are more focused on your field or in your field. You would be able to have access to more people that practice that type of law and have connections and networks that would be helpful. Oh, and do I have anyone? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Being in litigation at the Department of Homeland Security, I appeared before judges every day, and some of them ended up kind of becoming friends of mine. And so I was able to kind of ask them, or even just see generally like what they did every day, to get a good idea. And I think for sure there was a level of mentorship that came through just being before them every day for those 9 or 10 years. So. But I think in specific, if I had a mentor on this, I didn't. But my dad, I think, was my mentor.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot of fumbling around. Like whatever introductory story Madiha did at the start, it sounds nice in retrospect, but going forward, there are a lot of bumps in the road. And there were a lot of paths I took where I was coming up against closed doors and trying to figure out how do I get into that room, and I couldn't. And probably a lot of mistakes I made that I wasn't even aware of. And so because I didn't have a lot of strong mentors. I had a couple. I had a few that once I really had a strong relationship, I latched onto them, and they later became kind of professional peers, and they're still friends and mentors. But I think I echo a lot of what was said, but I want to add this. People sometimes look for mentors in their workplace, and I think you can find mentors in your workplace, but you also need to remember, I think particularly in the private sector, the people who are senior to you are also, there's a professional dynamic, right? And so they're also like your boss, and they may not mentor you the same way. And sometimes you need to get out of your space to get access to those people. And I'll tell you what I mean. It wasn't until much later in my career that I went to the first NASABA conference, National Association of NAPABA, I'm sorry, Asian Pacific American Bar Association, right? And I went, and I was amazed at how many GCs and law firm partners and judges there who were totally happy to like sit in the lobby of the hotel and chat it up with these junior associates. If they were partners at my firm, I would never have had this type of casual access to them, because we would have all been in work mode. But when you get out of your professional space and into a different space, and into a headspace where other people know they're there to talk to folks, that's where you make more connections. So if I had taken the time, and it takes time, and that's what's really hard about this, is that mentorship and thinking about your career doesn't just happen magically. It takes time. You have to set aside time. And it's like business development. I knew a law firm partner who told himself, once a week, I have a phone call with a new person, and it's a business development type call. And that takes discipline. It's the same way with thinking about mentorship and learning about your career. Really being intentional about who do I want to talk to, who do I want to get to know. And so if I had, at an earlier stage in my career, put in the time and gone to some of these larger, I was focused on Lubani, which was small and growing. But I should have also spent some time at these larger bar associations that were established, because they had all these mentors and resources. And they even had something where, in order to meet some of these senior people, you as a law student had to volunteer. So they kind of tapped into the fact that law students wanted to meet more senior people. So get yourself into those circles, and you'll find people, and you'll be in a setting where folks want to talk about their jobs, and you'll just have an opportunity to learn more and to make connections. And you make connections for the sake of learning. You don't make connections for the sake of getting the job. And if you make the connection for the sake of learning and it's sincere, then you build a relationship. You never know when that relationship is going to come up again. It may never come up again. You might call that person in 10 years and be like, hey, so and so. They may call you. I have people who I kind of built relationships with, and now every now and then they call me like, hey, listen, you went to law school with this person. Do you think you could tell me more about them, because their friend, they supervise someone who's applying for a job here. It's really important to have that sincerity of, I'm making the relationship for the sake of the relationship, and for the sake of learning, not for the sake of, I need something from you, because people will see right through that.
Yeah, I was going to echo that. I thought that was the thing that stood out the most to me, was just the sincerity. Yes, it's important to seek advice and to do all of that and establish relationships. But in establishing the relationship, you do want your genuine sentiment and sincerity to come through, because it comes across as it's a turnoff. It's when somebody is just trying to take what they can get. Obviously, gratitude is so important, right? Going back and talking to the people who've helped you in any way in your life, in your career, to really appreciate, hey, I appreciate what you did for me. You were there for me. You got me to this point. I think it matters, because sometimes you never know. That person might be like, this person is awesome, and they are humble enough to appreciate where they came from and how they got to where they are. It makes a difference. And I just think that also being out there to help others, and whether you are volunteering your time or services or your own advice in situations, I think it presents you as a person who is who's there not just to take, but to give as well. And so I think people are more likely to be interested in advising you when you're open to helping and advising others.
Yeah, the pay it forward for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah, agreed. So on that note, I know we have a few more minutes. If anyone has any questions, please put it in the chat. And I think I wanted to segue to a little bit of the MAPS goals, and for this committee itself, the pay it forward. We have a resume review committee for anyone who's trying to apply for any of these positions, whether it's a judgeship, and it's a very detailed questionnaire. We have resources. We have these great, amazing judges here who might be willing to give their time. And if you are either willing to review a resume or you need someone to review a resume, please reach out to us. I think Sidra might have put the link or email address where you can send that. It's a resume review at mapsnational.org. I know we've been helping some folks who are applying to federal positions for various things, not just legal. And I think it's been a really popular service. So let's make sure to do that. And I think that's really it. Is there anything else to add, Sidra or Ahmed, about MAPS or any of the initiatives that you guys would like to add?
No, that was masterfully done. Thank you. That was very exciting to hear the inputs and the experiences. And of course, our members who couldn't attend last minute will benefit from it during second viewing, inshallah, when we release recordings. But yes, resume review is one of the main services. We also do a number of community to practice to connect you with people in your own field. We have one for legal professionals, of course, and up to 10 other ones that we're rolling out gradually. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I want to thank you all, and thank you especially Madiha for putting this together, and Judge Asim and Judge Samia. And I really appreciate your time, and hopefully you stay in touch with the network, inshallah.
Yeah, and I think MAPS is a good way to network. So hopefully it's a way we can all connect and continue to build a network, a legal network. Like Mabani was one, but this is a larger, grander scale, and we're hoping that it can provide more resources for folks, and even ourselves. It helps us keep growing in our career and sort of what we're doing and our goals. So there's a minute left. If there's anything anyone wants to add, Samia, Asim.
Go to the. I won't be there, so I can't. I need to check myself. But this weekend is the NUML conference, and if folks are able to get there, it's going to be a great opportunity to meet other people and find some mentors. But I just want to say thanks for everyone for putting this together. And it was a lot of fun hearing and learning from you, Samia, and Madiha. As always, it's a pleasure to spend time with you. And I hope to our guests that this was really helpful. And if I could be of assistance to anyone, feel free to reach out to me offline. I'd be happy to chat.
Yeah, same. I really appreciate you putting this event together. I wish that I had attended one of these before. Maybe I would have gotten there sooner. Um, but I did. There's one thing that I wanted to add, and I thought about it after, and that was just that I interviewed twice for this position, and the first time I do have a strong feeling that the reason I didn't get it is because when I went in for the interview, everything seemed to be going really great until they asked me what I thought my weakness might be in this position as an immigration judge. And I said, I think it'll be really sad for me to have to tell somebody that I can't keep them here in the United States. I think it would really, really break my heart. But to be honest, that's not what you say in an interview. You need to be able to say, I can do this job and I will not be emotionally devastated telling someone I can't. You have to be able to say that, whatever you're going to be feeling. So I think that was my mistake there. But what I did when I went home that day was I wrote down everything I could remember from that interview, every question I was asked, because not just because I wanted to remember it for my next attempt, but because I thought maybe somebody else might be able to make use of that. And in the future, actually, obviously I ended up getting the position, but somebody had reached out to me much later who was looking to apply and asked me for, if I had anything to assist them. And I sent them, I copied and pasted the notes I'd made to myself of the questions that I was asked. I don't know if they got us the same questions. I think it was like 6 years after I had applied or whatever that time. But the fact that I was able to send that list, I probably put them with a leg up, to be able to think, what do I need to prepare? How do I need to prepare? And what should I know? So if you are ever in a position like that where you're vying for something, try to make notes so that you can pass that on to other people or save it for yourself for the next time you try.
Excellent advice. Thank you again so much, both of you, and Ahmed and everyone else. Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you all.
Take
Have a
care.
good night.
Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum. Good night. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.